If you want to join on YouTube, you can. There's a link on Hermetic Spirituality, and that way it would be easier to see your questions. If you're over there on RC, can't quite see from there. The esoteric ebooks Instagram ad post it wasn't an ad, just a post to advertise, got blocked. And I think it's hard to comment on most of my pages. A lot of them are being flagged by a mob of angry griffins or something like that. Who knows? But you can't get a good man down. I'll talk louder in a minute, but save voice for the full 5-hour stretch. That's sad.
Yeah. Delete. 3, 4.
Hello.
Do you begin now?
Yes, and yeah, I'm just finishing the last stream.
We pay for the drinks and we.
Wonderful. Last one. The after lecture ritual last night ran all night, but it was something. All right, what do we got here? Better post this time. Can't see there. Hello, guys. Yeah, have a seat. So cool to have a Canadian here. Yeah. And where are you going to be from in Canada?
Montreal.
Montreal. That's part of Canada, right?
Non, j'en ai laissé un. J'en ai laissé les parapluies à la maison. Et les capuches. Capuches. Les bonnets, les capuches. Les bonnets.
Non, mais c'est pas bien.
C'est pas grave. Je vais laisser à la maison. Non, je vais ça pour.
All right, non, français. Ouais? Whole thing in French?
It's good in English too.
Oh, but I speak like the worst French in the whole world, so it would be like a comedy show plus informative. How great would that be? Yeah?
Where are you from?
Vancouver.
Vancouver.
Not really a shock, is it?
We went last year.
Oh, yeah?
Great, yeah.
That's cool. Sorry, one sec, just let me finish this and then it's all done. My, support staff had the night off. Yeah. Sometimes you just need to simplify things. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, moving this to YouTube. Sometimes it might seem like I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to someone else. How high does that need to be? Good question. I'm being creative, just like a good Waldorf student. Oh, wow. Oh. This is why it's free. Free is another word for unprofessional.
Okay.
No. Started pouring rain all of a sudden here, so we can go singing in the rain after. Mm-hmm. 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 All right. Whew. Just let you do all yourself, hey?
Yeah, just the two of us, so you don't have to do it.
Oh, there's lots of people here. We're streaming on 7 sites. Yeah, last night was meant for locals more, and it was downstairs in the Alchemist basement, which was really cool. I just posted a very funny video on Esoteric eBooks Instagram of us singing some songs before we did a all-night healing ritual. So I tried to sleep, but it didn't work. That's how it goes sometimes. At least it's only a 2-day event, not a 7-day event, though I have London for 2 days, tomorrow and the next day, and then Ireland 2 days, and California. Yeah. And where are you from?
Oh.
You're from Paris. And you're from Montreal.
But
We live in Paris now.
So how's the French work? Do you laugh at her French? Inside? No? It's sort of cool. I think Quebec French is cool. Yeah.
Yeah, they like Quebec.
Why would you say quelle heure est-il when you can say Québec? Right? Sort of like that? Sort of like that?
I didn't speak French when I was in Canada.
Oh, so you don't speak Quebecois French? Wow, that's it.
I learned English only from China. I spoke only English when I was in Canada. So
Yeah.
they all like Quebec French.
That's
All
interesting.
French,
I always heard the opposite. Really?
Yeah, they all like
You're not being a tricky Frenchman right now?
it's not because French sometimes laugh at the accent, but they don't like it.
Yeah.
They
Huh.
like it, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of cool when you hear your own language spoken so differently and with so much energy and passion. Like they really go for it. All right. Boom, boom. I should have had one of them live streaming me doing that. Then they would believe it's a comedy show. This is not a spiritual lecture. Pure comedy here, folks. All right. So, first thing I'm covering is one, two, three, four. Très bien. 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare a thumb war. Remember that? So we are going to talk about. What are we going to talk about? We're talking about practical Kabbalah and the tree of life and alchemy. Any background for either of you two in that?
Wow.
Oh, some Kabbalah, yes.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Actually, Merkaba.
Merkaba. That's deep Kabbalah. Merkaba is deep. That's heavy Kabbalah.
I got an initiation.
Yeah, we went to a Merkaba meditation.
Oh yeah, where did you do the Merkaba meditation?
We went to UK for a class.
Was it a Kabbalah Center class or
No,
independent
no,
group?
Actually, it's probably New Age spiritual thing, and
Yeah.
it's meditation. You kind of combine the breathing with the geometrical shapes like the star surrounding the body.
How was it? How was that for you? Just visualizing the Star of David and yeah.
Yeah, it takes some practice. He didn't practice much, but I like it. It takes some time, and then after that,
What was the hardest thing? Was it visualizing or?
the hardest thing for me is to just visualize.
Yeah.
It's intellectual.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest thing is to really feel that you're inside. That takes years.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, it's the kind of thing that I always love hearing because, like anything, you forget what you take for granted when you do something a lot. And the New Age has appropriated a lot of Kabbalistic practices ever since Kabbalah Center and Madonna all got together and did their great work of. Well, they made available a bunch of books that were only published in Aramaic and Hebrew, and they translated those into English, created very beautiful. So we sort of owe Madonna a debt for giving access to English readers of the largest collection of Kabbalistic literature, the Sefer Zohar. You called this what again? You called this the glyph of the Metatron. Metatron, hello. Have a seat. Yes, anywhere. On the Tree of Life, angels are generally attributed to different spheres. There's the 10 spheres and the 22 paths, and each of them, they all have angels. Most of them have multiple angels. Metatron is associated with the top. And like the angel Sandalphon associated with the bottom, I think they're exclusively the two main angel names that are actually. What are we going to talk about? All right. Evening. Hello. So, the basic idea in the Tree of Life is that it represents the personal microcosmic world as well as the macrocosmic universe as well, often equated with as above, so below. And you hear often people say, as within, so without. What's inside me is outside me. What's above me is below. Interestingly, that's not actually correct if you look at the source literature from the Emerald Tablet, their Tabula Smaragdina. It only says as above, so below, or as below, so above, as below, so as above, so below. To be very exact about it, it says quotas inferius is secret quotas superius, as quotas superius is secret quotas inferius. So that which is below is like that which is below, above, that which is above is like that which is below. And nowhere in the Emerald Tablet does it say that which is within is like that which is without, and that which is without is like that which is within. That's very much a New Age interpretation. And a lot of people quote that now as it coming from the Emerald Tablet. But like some Hermetic books and philosophy, such as the Kabbalah, which is the most popular one published in the 20th century by not 3 initiates, but 1 man. It's just they're including an interpretation. That's my reading of it. As above, so below, as within, so without. It's not actually in the Emerald Tablet, but that is more or less what they mean. However, if you look at it on the Tree of Life in terms of above and below, you could say that maybe it's redundant to say as within, so without, or perhaps inaccurate if you were using it as a paradigm in which to actually practice certain Kabbalistic techniques. All right. One of the most interesting things is the Emerald Tablet is often dismissed by a lot of forms of Christianity as occultism and esotericism and devil worship, stuff like that, because it comes from a pagan god. But what's most interesting is if you ever read different interpretations of the Bible, especially one of my teachers, Eugene Peterson, he translated the entire Bible and called it the Message Bible, New and Old Testaments. And when he translated the Lord's Prayer, check out what he did. Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are, set the world right, do what's best, as above, so below. Keep us alive with 3 square meals, keep us forgiven with you and forgiving others, keep us safe from ourselves and the devil. You're in charge. You can do anything you want. You're a blazing beauty. Yes, yes, yes. Quite a dramatic interpretation. That is how his whole interpretation of the Bible reads. It's not what you'd call a technically accurate interpretation, but contextually accurate and useful for a lot of people. It's very, very popular if you've never heard of it. What I like is that he snuck in there a reference to the Emerald Tablet and the Hermetic principle of as above, so below. Whereas most people would consider that pretty heretical to do that. There's been a trend going on for a long time now with Christianity readopting its own mystical forms and versions that it lost during the Counter-Reformation. Christianity had a deep mystical spiritual practice that it developed out of ancient Hebrew practices in Judaism and Kabbalah. But I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but during the Counter-Reformation, a lot of evangelical Lutherans, Calvinists, and people like that started pointing the finger at the Roman Catholics, who were going a bit crazy with the relics and paying money to touch something and having huge lines in Rome and to buy your grandmother 20 years less in purgatory. So it wasn't a completely false criticism to say, you guys, you're taking this way too far. You might even be slightly hypocritical. So change. And what Roman Catholics did is what they usually do. We because, when you're a church that never changes and is always infallible, they swung so far to the other extreme that they almost got rid of every element of spirituality within their faith. Most mystical practices were just wiped out. And the head of the Hermetic teachings in hospital and schools, who had inherited that rule from Marsilio Ficino and Pico Giovanni Mirandola, he was burned at the stake. His name is Giordano Bruno. It might have been astronomical reasons for which he was burned, but either way he was burned, and it wasn't until the 20th century, I believe, early 20th century, that a pope said, yeah, we're sorry about that one, and built a statue to him. So that's typically what you see in a lot of forms of spirituality, is you see, I guess there's a limit to this. You see these overreactions going back and forth. Vogues of spirituality flip-flops so harshly that what's heretical one moment is doctrine the next, or practice the next. Just like early monastic Christians and monks who ran into the desert and declared themselves celibate, a lot of them were crucified and burned at the stake for heresy. Did you know that? Yeah, a lot of the early monastics, a lot of people criticized Roman Catholicism for having no married option for its clergy. But in fact, at first they were burning them at the stake because it seemed like something they couldn't control. Overreaction, right? But then a little while later, this is again in the first 1,000 years, they decided to flip-flop again. And they said, hey, these monks, these ascetics who are practicing celibacy and not owning possessions might have a good idea. They might be onto something, because they work a lot harder. They have a lot more free time. They don't have families to worry about. And any money they inherit from their families, they would give to the church. So the Roman Catholic Church, of course, made monastic celibacy required for all priests, with no option in between. As a result of all of that, the study of Hebrew mysticism and early Christian mysticism, as it developed through first 1,500 years until the Italian Renaissance, sort of sketchy, right? And a lot of practices that they must have had as common practices, things similar to what you see in transcendental meditation of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, or other forms of Hindu Tantra, Tattva work, which is looking at colored shapes and letting the color react in your retina to create another shape, and then tearing that apart or going through it into an elemental world to confront different parts of your psyche. When we do that with tarot cards, of course, we call it path working. So depending on what time you lived, you might have been a heretic, or you might have been en vogue. There you go, en vogue. A little French for you. And yes, I can see all of you guys now, so if you guys want to ask questions, you're welcome to ask questions. Anywho, so from the Emerald Tablet of Hermes, Trismegistus, which means thrice great, we have the idea of that which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above. And we won't get into right now the purpose of what that is about. But if you have any guesses, just shout them out. The purpose of the Tree of Life was to find a way of explaining how those processes would look in our lives, not to really explain the natural world. The Tree of Life wasn't an attempt to design an understanding of what we would now call scientific nature, or what we would look to hard sciences to explain. And that is where a lot of people, I think, go wrong with it and get sort of lost. It's designed to be it's a human fabrication or inspiration of a way of understanding what nature shows us so that we can better understand ourselves. And that, I think, is why the Emerald Tablet starts off by saying not as above, so below, but in fact, it does start off saying as below, so above. So observation rather than assertion of what is the divine reality is what's important. Especially if you want it to not become a doctrine that kills people one year and sanctifies them the next, and actually be a practical tool. It's a glyph, a symbol for understanding our natural spirituality as we understand. And that's why the tree changes and develops over time. There's lots of different models of the tree. Some of them don't even have 22 paths, which is interesting because the 22 paths correspond with the 22 Hebrew letters. And a lot of the work that we do with the Hebrew letters, and in some traditions, the tarot cards, is you work up the paths, meditating on them in a similar way to that which I described earlier. And every time you do one, you have a different guide. It's like a self-guided meditation, very much so. And different traditions and orders and religions have different ways of doing that. Wiccans and neo-pagans would do it in a very different way than someone in a Hermetic order, in a Rosicrucian or Anthroposophical group would do it. And then, of course, pure Roman Catholics have a whole different take on it, which you can read about in Meditations on the Tarot, which is written by actually an anthroposophist student of Rudolf Steiner's wife named Valentin Tomberg, though the book is published as anonymous, and a lot of people consider that. I mean, have you seen that book? Who likes Meditations on the Tarot?
Yeah, there's a tarot cards. She created one, and yeah, it was from Steiner and from the French, no? The French Constitution. Rosary? The French.
I'm not sure if you'd rather see the board, which is stuff most of you know, or the cool wall painting. Anyway. Hey, Frater. What you thinking about?
The order, yeah, there's this thing, yeah, it's Steiner too in Germany, in France, in England, and British too.
Is it this? During the turn of the century, there was a lot of orders. There was a lot of mystical orders going on. Yes, yes.
And there's the tarot card, it's 24 steps that starts with the Fool.
22, yeah.
Yeah, 22, yeah.
Yeah.
It goes each step, and she said just meditate on it, and it's each part of your life that you know where you are, if you know when you read it.
Mm-hmm. It's a very powerful exercise. It's one of the core practices in my life and has been since I was 13, 14. The first path is actually quite interesting. The first one is the universe card. Hello. And it's considered the only self-balanced path. It has all 4 elements on it, and it's the path of the cherubim, or the cherubs. But they're not little fat babies. That would be cute, but they're the gospel animals, you could call them, right? The lion, the eagle, the bull, and the lion. Lion, the eagle. You know what I mean? And because that path is self-balanced, it's considered the best first one to do, rather than either of the side paths up to the higher sephira. And that's makes it easier when you go into it. And this is, again, in theory. It's sort of a chill place to get your bearings. Whereas the other cards, like going down the tower, and once you really focus on that card long enough to have that kind of experience where you can pathwork into it, it can be traumatic. Like a lot of times I ended up, after my pathworking sessions, broken down and crying, and sometimes rejoicing because I gained massive insight into a problem in my life. It's very important to keep little diaries of this stuff too, because it's amazing what you look back on and see how you've changed and grown in ways you often don't realize. I mean, most change and growth, of course, happens without us really seeing it because it's so slow. And then you look back and like, oh, maybe I'm not nowhere in life. Maybe I have developed quite a bit. These theories are also used a lot in theurgy and thaumaturgy, or sacred magic, in rituals that often are drawn from the same formula as found in the Catholic Mass and also other Hebrew rituals and ceremonies. And a lot of those, of course, may be drawn from earlier sources like Egyptian, but there's no factual evidence of any of that. Let's see if there's any questions here online. Hello, everybody. So one one of the key ideas is that as you progress up these paths, and the paths are generally considered to be, as you progress up them, done in the path of the serpent. And the serpent is called Nehushtan. And the path lines up like that. Sometimes it's also nature. We got someone on the phone here. So as you wind up the pathway of nature and the serpent towards Keter or crown, you're slowly purifying yourself. And then the way that you get back down again is through something that they call. So one is obviously meant to imply a slow progression and a winding to and fro. And the other one, instantaneous. And that is the basic idea from which, hey there, guys. Hey, guys. Hi. Just cheers. Thank you very much. The idea is that it takes work and it's a slow progression to go up and purify yourself and work through your issues. But when you get up there, you're freer from them. You're slightly dissolved. And in alchemy, that's what up above we call solve. Let's start at a page. Oh, that's from last night. All right, I might have to start very loud to get through this. Solve. And in this process, as we dissolve ourselves and recoagulate, the idea is like in a alembic or a bottle, like our fancy drinks can be served here, slowly, like putting a feet under it, we're burning away and getting the fumes of purity to rise up, and then they come back down and we make ethanol. The Sham and Hebrew Kabbalah. You can get into quite a distinct argument over what term. It's not relevant to the idea in meditation, in prayer, in ritual and spirituality, and in initiation, that as we struggle to go up, we come back down. And then we do it again, over and over and over. One of the biggest secrets, I think, behind this is the fact that people see a path they take throughout their lives. And there's different ways to do this path. The first of which is referred to in alchemy as the lesser given in a few years. And it's basic purification of the elements to the extent that you've achieved mastery over yourself, self-mastery. This whole structure and model of achieving self-mastery, of path working and purifying thought and intention so that as you rise up high, you can create changes and then shoot them down, is the origin and basis of what people now in pop spirituality call the law of attraction. Yeah, you've heard that. So yeah, you can see why why someone wrote The Secret and wanted to simplify this process. It's a bit much for most people to worry about, but it's useful because the process shows us techniques, and the techniques are really crucial to doing things. That's why a lot of people buy The Secret or get Law of Attraction cassettes and then say it didn't work. I'm not rich and famous. What went wrong? I want my money back, or you're full of shit. Pardon my French. I had to say that. Pardon. So there's no shortcut to spiritual development. That's a fact. It's hard. and it's risky, just like any alchemy in a test tube or a alembic. You can always break things and blow them up. If you saw the museum upstairs, did you go see the? Not yet. Yeah. So they show you this shattered vessel of John Dee's failed experiment to make gold, but there's gold coating the inside of the glass. And the story is that he succeeded to make gold for Emperor Rudolph. However, it shattered, so he didn't get to keep the gold. And the experiment sort of failed, but he succeeded. Most serious scholars consider that to be bunk and just a distraction technique he used to get Rudolph to keep leaving him alone, because his actual work up there had very little to do with transformation of metals, and they did get dabble in some chemistry and potions and stuff like that. But you'll notice also up there where they developed the language of the angel system, as well as in England, and developed the Enochian system of spirituality and magic, of communicating with the angels using their own language, which is, of course, a language that he and Kelly invented. Fascinating. Very fascinating. There's a patch of grass up there, a little garden, and there's only one thing growing in the garden. And it's not what most of us would consider real food. It's just a bunch of mushrooms. And if you ask them, why is there a garden with just mushrooms? They'll tell you, well, sometimes they couldn't get out to get food, or they didn't have food and they needed a snack, or maybe they needed something to eat. What do you think? Do you think those mushrooms were just for lunch? Yeah, me neither. So they were tripping their balls off on psychedelics up there, communicating with angels. Angels who incidentally did at one point tell Edward Kelly to tell Dee that Edward Kelly was meant to sleep with Dee's young wife. And Dee said, yeah, okay, we'll wife swap for a night. Because that's the kind of thing angels do, is they tell men to swap wives. Nothing wrong with swapping wives if you want to swap wives, but I don't think that's really what angels are spending their time doing. It sounds to me like maybe they ate too many mushrooms and got a bit horny. I'm nervous talking to a Frenchman, because Canadians just look at French people as like the archetypal, jouissance of all that is Francais. Well, French Canadians think something else. But I think they would change their minds if they found out you guys loved their dialect. Why? Yeah, it's a cool dialect. I love all languages. My early studies were in ancient Aramaic, Hebrew, then Greek and Latin. And originally I wanted to study Enochian and do a linguistic analysis of the language. Someone else has done it. I realized early on that there's no point in me spending my time doing it. Someone else will do it, probably better than I could do it, because it's just such an obvious thing to do. And sure enough, the person who really did the biggest study of the language is the consultant for the TV show Supernatural, because they wanted to use it as exactly as possible. Later on tonight, I'm going to go into some Enochian stuff and distinctions between the different language and phonetic systems that they use, and the purpose of why those angels are communicated with at all. Was it you guys or the other guys that were talking about who were aliens with me? No, that was, sorry. It was Frank. Business meeting over there. Once you complete, actually not as going up through all the paths, but going halfway beauty of the sun, where the hexagram is, where the cross, or where the pentagram is. Let's keep in mind that the pentagram was actually, sometimes it's usually often put in the fifth step because 5 points, but it's one of the earliest symbols that was used to represent Jesus Christ. And it's in that Salve and Coagula, and initiate your soul up to the place of the sun, or right before it, depending on who you are purified, become self-mastered. Solar initiation that a lot of people said Rudolf Steiner had. Oh, he had the solar initiation. And that was often the big goal, to become an adept. It's very similar, though, if you think about it correctly, to getting your black belt in a martial arts. if you get a black belt in a martial art, you don't run off and go and fight Bruce Lee, do you? No. It's just the beginning. It's really the real first step. And because of that, there's a saying in initiatory orders and esoteric orders and some priests who study Kabbalah that the adept or the master never quits Yesod. And Yesod is the foundation sphere between the kingdom and Tiferet, the light, the beauty, and the solar initiation. So as much as we might say we've had that solar initiation and become a master, become a spiritual master or adept, amongst spiritual masters and adepts, it's pretty suspicious if someone doesn't agree that yes. At the end of the day, though, we're still sort of stuck with the moon. We're never fully there. And that sort of reminds me of what St. Paul says when he says, when we're alive, we're never going to see things fully, right? We're going to see through a lens darkly. Only when we're dead and the fullness comes do we fully understand what that's like. But we get glimpses of it through self-mastery. And those glimpses are what take us along what's called the greater circulation. Some people consider the greater circulation to be the initiation of the same alchemical process of purification, but done over your lifetimes, reincarnated lifetimes, or transmigrated soul lifetimes. Some people just consider the process of the rest of your life until death. St. John of the Cross in Dark Night of the Soul actually writes about these two processes in a clever way because, he didn't want to get in trouble. And he calls them the dark night of the senses and the dark night of the spirit. In specific, he's referring to a certain phase of each of those circulations. He's not saying they're all dark and dreary. They're not. But he's definitely writing about that very alchemical process because he was very familiar with it. Anyone alive studying theology or religion back in those times would have been familiar with this. Just like we have from the cloud of unknowing, the practice of meditating in the medieval manuscript by repeating a single word from the Bible, often found by just doing bibliomancy and flipping open a book to a page, getting a word, and using that as your Om mantra. A lot of people think those sorts of meditations don't exist within the Judeo-Christian tradition, but they're there in spades. It's probably why the Dalai Lama, his main teaching to give to Christians when they ask for one, like I did, is to grab them and say, don't become a Buddhist. Don't become a Buddhist. Now, obviously, if you become a Buddhist and went to met the Dalai Lama and said, I became Buddhist, he'd probably be like, that's fine. Good for you. Good for you. But what he likes to say is, just keep doing what you're doing. Take your path all the way. Stay on the path you're on, because you don't need to follow multiple paths up the mountain. You only need one. But if your path really is not the path for you, fucking change it. Pardon my French. The last thing I'm going to say about this before I take a break, before the next little mini lecture, is intention. How we imagine and how we use our will is considered to be the secret of sacred magic, or theurgy and thaumaturgy, which are the two forms of magic actually not forbidden by the Bible. The Bible does forbid magic, but what it actually forbids is something called pharmacy, or pharmacy making of potions and things like that. The one thing that's really very common in our world today. Interesting, right? Very interesting also is the fact that the early symbol for Jesus, the Cairo, became that. That was an early symbol for Jesus, and now it's on our prescription bottles for medicine. So our bottles of medicine literally have the name of Christ on it. Kra, just the first two letters. How cool is that? Right? Yeah. That's one of my favorite little tidbits. So, yeah, that's about it. This is the basic understanding of how alchemy and spiritual transformation occurs within the Kabbalistic tree of life and in our own bodies, and the process that we use to do this through our own personal practice a religious order going to the mass. The mass is all designed just to take you up there, dissolve you, and bring you back down again without sin. Do it over and over and over again so that you not slowly make your way up the tree and stay in any one sphere, stay in any one place, so that you go up the tree and down in the lightning flash so many times. You've ridden that serpent up, you've shot down the lightning so many times that you have this ability to transform things. Like that moment when you're having a horrible fight with someone. And you just find the will, you find the imagination. You don't know how you do it, but you find those two faculties can allow you just to say, wait a minute, and just shut it down, just change everything. If you felt that electricity, it's almost that I'm not going to let this moment be as it is anymore. I'm going to change it, and the moment shifts. You say the right thing, you feel the right thing, you look the right way at the person, and everything transforms, and almost magical. You could even have that experience driving, doing anything in life. There's this process. The more purified we are, the idea is, the easier it is to get up there, bring down the spirit, your true self, as Thomas Merton or Christian mystics call it, your higher genius, as Victorian occultists like to call it, holy guardian angel, as it was called by William Butler Yeats and the other members of the Golden Dawn. Or if you're into Thelema and Aleister Crowley, you would call it Aiwass, which is the name of Aleister Crowley's holy guardian angel. Nothing wrong with that, but it is what it is. If you were going to start a religion, it's an interesting choice to have everyone focus on the name, the secret name you were given for your true self, isn't it? Then again, what else did Jesus Christ create through maybe no fault of his own? Thank you very much for listening. I'm going to take a break, be back. Any questions? Any last questions? Okay, let me see. Do you want to see what the internet has to say? Lots of wows. Some hells no. Shut that shit down and purge it. I guess some people don't like what I think. All right. We'll be back. Jack. Oh, this is the book that covers that stuff. This one doesn't. This one looks at Irish gods in the Tree of Life. Yes. Yes. This is the one you got. This is the good one. So this is basically an essay I wrote for a famous Canadian musician who wanted me to teach him after I had achieved what you would call the solar initiation. And at that time, I left the group that had trained me and taught me and focused on my Master's of Divinity at the Vancouver School of Theology and moved on from there into my PhD with Nicholas Goodrick Clark. But this was originally an essay, which was my notes and advice to a Canadian musician on my approach to things, because I knew he didn't have time to actually do what he said he wanted to do with me, and he didn't accept that, but I knew it was a fact. I very much liked his music, and we maintained an acquaintanceship. But so this is what I wrote as a basic, simple explanation of that this form of spirituality in our everyday life. And I used quotes from everything from a lot of Roman Catholics, even though I'm not Roman Catholic really anymore, and to Steiner. Yeah, there's a one of my favorites is Dermot O'Murhu, a Franciscan Irish priest who spent most of his life working as a social scientist in the poor areas of London. And I'm actually going to meet up with him for a little interview, hang out in Dublin in a few days to talk about some things and reconnect, because he gave me some classes way back in the day. And when he came into the hall to lecture, I actually played the Irish bagpipes for him. So Dermot O'Murhu, who's amazing. Also my mentor, Sally McFaig, who's the foremost theologian on ecological theology and recognizing God as the body of the world rather than supernatural. Yeah. And this is on demons and how they affect us through our sins and how we can cleanse them, drawing on the advice of St. John of the Cross. It's not what you would call light reading, but it's spiritual reading. It's not that heavy, especially if you ignore all the demon names. They're just demon names that essentially someone might have made them up, right? They're as made up as angel names. They didn't get projected down into us, but because any structure that we understand can give us a better path forward, right? Heuristically, like climbing up rungs of a ladder or having a map for a dark wood. It might not be completely precise, but it's better to have some map than no map. Or if you're a musician, you need a set list so you can throw away the set list. If you have no set list, what do you? You're lost sometimes. All right. Cheers. Shalom.
So this song